got to get a hold. Oh, my goodness.
Here he comes.
He's in big trouble.
Second now. Big shots by Ciryl Gane. He's got a minute 25 to work. Warnings from the referee.
Goddard is all over
Brandon, last weekend at UFC Paris, Ciryl Gane kind of made people remember his name. He stepped back in there with Sergey Spivak, got the win, looked great doing it, and in the process made sure people remembered he's a top 5 heavyweight in that UFC division. There was a lot of other action at UFC Paris. Of course, Manon Fiorot got the big win over Namajunas. You also talk about Benoit Saint-Denis at home, looking like a new fighter at 155 pounds. But Ciryl Gane was clearly the story, clearly the person that everybody was talking about afterwards. And you're talking about a fighter that coming off the John Jones fight, people questioned him. There was a lot of questions whether he was a legit contender because of the way John Jones dismissed him so easily. You go back to the Francis Ngannou fight where the guy with 2 blown out knees wrestled him and made him look like nothing. But in between that, you have the Bam Bam Tua Tuivasa fight where he looked great and knocked out Tua in the 3rd round. You have this fight with Spivak and knocking him out in the 2nd round to the point where he was going in and out and even like powered up his punch, right? Like he was a video game waiting to hit. When you see something like that, Brandon, does that kind of ring bells of like this guy is still one of the top guys in that division?
Yeah, I mean, I always thought, to me, Ciryl Gane is a top guy in the heavyweight division in the UFC. It's one of those things where you just go back to, man, hey, man, sometimes it's just not your night. And against Francis Ngannou and against John Jones, it just wasn't his night. And I think he even said it. He had 2 mess ups. And people try to put that as the only thing he's ever done in the UFC. But then the saying he does performances where he takes out a Derek Lewis, where he takes out a Tai Tuivasa, where he just has this nice performance with Spivak. And also too with Spivak, it was pretty good because also you saw Spivak go for the takedown. He stopped him. He stuffed him. Spivak even had a leg of his. He was in on a single leg, and Ciryl Gane was able to get out. I mean, Ciryl Gane standing up, we know how good he is, and I mean he straight up showed that in this fight. But the thing was, hey, can you stop a takedown? And that's really also what Michael Bisping was even talking about. He was like, yo, it's one thing, to get taken down and everything like that. But the thing is, it's like you want to be able to stop a takedown, which of course you talking about, hey, a left hook is always good, to stop a takedown. And that's really what Ciryl Gane just got to be able to do is just, man, hey, let me keep this fight standing up, because standing up is definitely where I want to be. I don't need to be on the ground and try to do all these submission stuff, which is what I think was his thing with Francis Ngannou. Now the thing with John Jones is, hey man, that's what happened with John Jones. Like I said, he had a mental lapse, and that's what happened. But hey, hopefully, you can see the Ciryl Gane you saw now, and maybe we can get that Tom Aspinall fight.
Yeah. We talk about this a lot with Izzy, right? Like you don't have to be a good wrestler; you just have to be good at defense. Like MVP, we talk about with Bellator and maybe potentially the UFC now. Like you don't have to be. Like, if you're a good striker, you don't have to be good at wrestling. You just have to be good at wrestling defense. You have to keep people from taking you down so you can stay up and strike with them. Ciryl Gane's one of those guys, not just with that left hook. You're talking about with knees and other things that he does a lot. If he had confidence against some of these wrestlers avoiding takedowns, he could throw those when those guys come rushing in and kind of slow them down. But unfortunately, he's terrified of going to the ground. Now, obviously, Spivak has like some wrestling ability and it's kind of a test, but he's not John Jones. He's not Curtis Blades. He's not one of those guys that can smother you. Even Tom Aspinall has a lot better wrestling than Ciryl Gane. But Ciryl Gane showed that he's fast, he's fluid, he can get around some of these heavyweights a lot quicker than they can, and his striking is on a different level than a lot of them. Obviously, you talk about the French kickboxing background and Muay Thai and stuff like that. You talk about his ability in the stand-up game. All he ever had to do was just keep people from taking him down. Everybody else is not a champion. He's dominated almost every single person inside that cage. Here's a guy who got a late start to the sport, right? Like he didn't start pro fighting until he was 28. He's now 33, 5 years later. And he's already had, an interim title shot and a regular title shot. And that's only 5 years into your career. He's still a baby in the sport when it comes to experience as far as a pro fighter goes. We talked about Tom Aspinall calling him out. That obviously makes a lot of sense for the next fight. We still don't know what's up with Pavlovich. He seems to be the kind of stand-in in New York City when John Jones and Stipe fight in November. But he's not fighting unless something happens to one of those guys. So he's still kind of stuck there waiting for that next title shot. And even Ciryl Gane said it. Both these guys might retire after this fight in November. So you might be talking about another interim or permanent title fight coming up for Ciryl Gane. So when Aspinall calls him out, Ciryl Gane said the best thing in the world. He's like, I understand he's calling me out. I understand where he's coming from. He wants to come up. I'm only focused on the title right now. If that's the guy that gets me to the titles, then that's great. If it's not, that's great too. I only want to get back to that belt. That's what I want. And that seems to be Sergey Pavlovich. Like, that seems to be the guy that's going to get him back to the belt. So as much as we would love to see a Tom Aspinall Ciryl Gane fight, let me ask you, isn't that really the fight that we're going to see though? Is Sergey and Ciryl?
No, because I want to say that that you said Pavlovich is the standing guy, so he's off limits, so he's not fighting anytime soon. To me,
that's
man,
only 2 months away, and these guys don't fight but like every 6 months, 8 months anyway.
Yeah, but I'm saying, if I'm Ciryl Gane, and if I could, man, if I'm healthy and I'm good, and I would probably be like, I would probably say like, Aspinall, let's try to get on that on that UFC card in New York, because again, it's New York, big exposure. You're on the same fight as the title fight, and then hey, if John Jones and them retire, the winner of that fight, then we'll fight Pavlovich.
Yeah. That makes sense too. I just don't see Ciryl doing that quick of a turnaround because he never has. Like, every fight of his, other than that 1 year going into with the Derek Lewis fight and into Francis, he's never really fought more than twice a year. If 3 times, like that was that 1 year. Otherwise, it's like once. These heavyweights, Dana White loves to say he likes to fight fighters 3 times a year. These heavyweights barely fight twice a year at best. John Jones is fighting twice this year, but it took 3-4 years before his last fight. Stipe's been out since the Francis fight from a couple years ago. Pavlovich has fought frequently, but now he's waiting for everything to kind of play out. Aspinall, of course, coming off the injury. Curtis Blades is the only dude I've really seen in there, and maybe Tai Tuivasa that are in there like 2-3 times a year. Everybody else is like once a year. Maybe Volkov. Volkov fights quite a bit too. But, you see Derek Lewis popping up, trying to get in shape, running with Nick Diaz and everybody else, and maybe he's trying to reinvent his career. So there's always that possibility of a rematch down the road because of name value, and just because Derek Lewis always puts asses in seats, which is the bottom line, whether he's ranked or not. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what's going to play out with Ciryl Gane. I think it's kind of a waiting game now. Like, what happens in November? Does he want to get on that card? That's a good point, Brandon. I will say I didn't think of that, but if they did get on that undercard, they're in the same time schedule as far as training goes, and it's one of the biggest spotlights you could have in New York City. So definitely something to think about. Also, real quick to talk about that UFC Paris card, you're talking about the co-main event. Manon Fiorot made sure people knew who she was now with that big win over Rose. Rose broke her finger in the first round, but I really don't think that would have made a difference. I think Manon was just kind of possessed that fight. But Benoit Saint Denis looks like a totally different fighter at 155 pounds. At 170 pounds, he was almost murdered in that ring or in that cage in his debut. And since going down to 155 pounds, he looks like a different thing. What were some of your other highlights on that card before we move on?
Yeah, man, just really talking about that co-main event. Like I said, Pharrell, to me, I knew who she was. I knew she was on the track. Like a lot of people thought that she would have been next for the title, but I know she had said that she had wanted to wait a while, and that's why, to me, Grasso had got the next title shot. But Pharrell, man, like I said, she hasn't had any easy wins, but I think this is where she kind of needed a big name, and Rose was that person, and she made it look easy, against Rose. You could definitely see she the thicker fighter, bigger fighter, and she just went out there and she did her thing in front of the French crowd. So I'm most likely probably thinking that she could be next. I mean, to me, I know we're gonna talk about it later, but the Singapore card with Aaron Blanchfield is between those two to see who could be next after the Grasso title fight.
Yeah, I mean, Firo said, hey, she doesn't mind taking an easy fight against Aaron Blanchfield. Their war of words has already begun. Aaron Blanchfield obviously is one of the contenders as well. And both these ladies have definitely thrown their name in the hat, and the trash talking has already begun. As far as Rose, that kind of leaves her in no man's land. Was this fight kind of an anomaly because she broke her finger? Is she going to, like she said, she can't go back down to strawweight because she was walking around now at a heavier weight at 135. It's just be kind of hard to cut all the way down to 115. But, you saw her against the bigger fighter in the flyweight division, and she kind of got bullied a little bit. Do you think Rose stays at flyweight, or do you think maybe because she's flirted with retirement already once or twice?
I really didn't think that. I mean, again, I don't hang out with Rose. I don't know how much dropping down to 115 is for her. How hard it is. But to me, like saying, she didn't look like a big strawweight. She looked like a tall strawweight, but not a big strawweight. So that's why when she went up to 125, I was a little shocked. But I mean, hey, like I said, maybe 115 was getting too hard for her to make. So she decided to do 125. I mean, hey, it was just 125. Like I said, it's a new weight division. You got to get used to it. She was trying to go right into the deep end of the 125 division. Maybe her next fight she'll go with somebody that's maybe top 15. And she might have a different result.
Give her a chance to rebound a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then, like I said, actually one other thing before we move on from the UFC Paris thing, shout out to Nora Cornell. I didn't know who she was. I thought Jocelyn Edwards was going to run right through her, and she beat Jocelyn Edwards, and it wasn't even close. Like, she had a really great performance. A lot of the French fighters showed up and showed out in UFC Paris. So congrats to a lot of them getting a chance to showcase on a big card. We talk about that when Bellator goes over Europe a lot, and they get a lot of chances to spotlight some of these fighters you might not have heard of before. And William Gomez with that body kick, wow, that was something as well. But that is UFC Paris. That's Ciryl Gane. We're talking about that. Brandon, let's move on to Max Holloway.
This is 10th straight main event. And he opens up round 3 with a big one. I mean, that's a big start. And to your point, Brendan, he looks phenomenal. Especially right now. Wow. Empty in the tank is the Korean zombie now, man.
Max Holloway is in such a weird position when it comes to being just a gatekeeper now, right? Like, no matter who he beats, there's very, very little chance he gets Alex again. There's no chance of that Alex Volkanovski 4th fight because, let's be real, he's been beat 3 times. And one of those you could say was like, all right, this could have been going either way, especially that second fight. But the 3rd fight, Alex left no doubt. And when you see a performance like Max Holloway a couple weeks ago in UFC Singapore come out, and let's be real, the first round was kind of back and forth. After that, Max calmed down, and his punches were way more crisp than the Zombie. Korean Zombie was just like throwing haymakers at one point because he had nothing left to lose, and Max put him to sleep in that 3rd round. Max said, I just caught him before he caught me. If you watch it, there was no question. There was really no question when there's levels to striking. And Zombie's dangerous, but let's be real. Max is so accurate with some of those punches when he's thrown in firefights that it's not an accident when he knocks you out. What do you think of that performance he had against Zombie? And really, where do we go from here with Max?
I mean, it was good performance by Max. He did his thing, went out there, as Max Holloway does, and he put on a striking performance. Looked good. Like I said, he as of right now, he's saying he is the number 2 guy in that featherweight division. I know Max Holloway wants a fourth title fight because that's what he said. Like he wants to try to get that fourth title fight. But I mean, to me, I feel like he's making it where, to me, it doesn't look like he's leaving the featherweight division. The person who might be leaving that division is Alex, and maybe he might just be waiting for Alex to just leave. You know, and because Volkanovski even talking about, you know, moving up. So when he moves up, you know, he might have to drop the title, and that's when Max Holloway can fight for the title again. But to me, I don't know. I know people talk about Max Holloway, you know, maybe doing fun fights at 155, but to me, I just don't think he can handle 155. To me, man, like they're bigger, like the guys are too big up there. Like we saw him go up to 155 against Dustin Poirier, and man, he was taking some shots. Like, yeah, he made it all the way through all 5 rounds, but he was taking shots. You know, he wasn't in that fight at all. So that's why, to me, I just think he's going to be standing at 145, and he's going to be picking people apart.
Yeah, he's talked about moving to 155, and I agree with you. I just don't see it anymore because Max Holloway might only be 31 years old, but he's an old 31. Like he has been through war after war after war. Your body can only take so much punishment when you're being in those kind of wars. And you talk about the Dustin Poirier fight, the fact that he was willing to take a short notice fight with Khabib at one point as well, whatever he could do for the promotion. Look, anybody not named Alexander Volkanovski, Max is made look like they're nothing. Arnold Allen kind of gave him a little bit of a fuss, but let's be real. Everybody else, he's kind of just dominated. He made Calvin Kattar look like he wasn't even belong in the cage with him for 5 rounds. Yair Rodriguez, who was just the interim champion and in a title fight, when he fought Max, it was not close. Max dominated him for 5 rounds. Some of these fights might go to decisions, but really that's just because Max doesn't always go for the kill. Max will punish you by volume. He will do what he has to take, but he doesn't usually go for the finish. He lets the finish come to him. He's one of those fighters. So other than Alex, you have to go all the way back to that Dustin Poirier fight at 155 pounds to see a loss. And then you have to go all the way back to Conor McGregor in 2013, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Which at that point, he was only a 21-year-old fighter. He was a young kid. You know, it's hard to think that was 10 years ago. It's hard to think that Max at 31 is considered an old fighter now, but that's just how many wars he's had over the last 10 years. This guy got started early, and he's been in the firefight. I mean, he made his UFC debut in 2012. So you're talking about 20 years old, ironically also against Dustin Poirier. Yep. At featherweight where he lost. From that point at UFC 143 to here we are now, knocking on the door of UFC 293. This guy's been there, and he's been there the whole time, going through, 150 pay-per-views. I'm sorry. Yeah, 150 pay-per-views. And we're left wondering what's next for him, because there really isn't another guy at featherweight that can give him a fun fight. Maybe if he wants to fight Ilya, if Ilya is not willing to wait for whatever's next with Alex, while Alex is figuring that out, if Alex wants to fight Makhachev or whoever else after October, and what happens with Makhachev and Oliveira. Max, unfortunately, even though he's been the most exciting thing in that division outside of Alex Volkanovski for the last 10 years, is left not knowing what's next. And we're left not knowing what's next for Max Holloway, because there are fun fights at 155 pounds. He can make the weight, obviously, but like you said, he's not a strong enough fighter to really do damage at that weight class. He does things by volume, and he's faster than those guys, but can he hurt a lot of those guys? You have to put him in there with a Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, I was saying, man, dude, the only 155 I might want to see him fight is Tony Ferguson, and that's about it.
And unfortunately, that would just be, putting Ferguson out to rest.
Maybe. I don't know, man, but maybe Tony could find something on Max, because Max is moving up. Maybe, man.
Honestly, I don't know if Tony fights again after that eye injury from the Bobby Green fight.
Because I'm saying, I mean, remember, man, Tony Ferguson used to fight at 170 as well, when he came in from the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, I just don't see anybody else. Look, he's beaten everybody else in that top 10. I don't think he's fought Evloev yet. I don't think he's fought Giga. But has he fought Josh Emmett? I don't think he has he?
No.
But Josh Emmett just retired, right?
Did Emmett retire?
I felt like he did after that last fight, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I don't think so. I thought he was like, yeah, I'm still in it.
Yeah, maybe Josh Emmett, but the way Ilya destroyed him, I really think if Ilya wants that title shot, maybe he should go through Max. But it really depends on when Alex wants to fight again. And then 155 pounds. Look, could he fight a Dan Hooker? Yeah, sure, because Dan Hooker is going between 145 and 155 pounds. That'd be a good matchup. But anybody in that top 5, I don't see Max hanging with them power-wise. DeRouche will take him down. Chandler will go nuts. He might catch Chandler like the way he caught Zombie because Chandler's so wild when Chandler fights. Dustin Poirier, he's already lost to twice. Gaethje, I think, is just too strong. Oliveira will probably sling with him until he goes down and then tap him out. And then Makhachev is too big. Makhachev is big for that 155-pound division anyway. So, I don't know. I'd love to see people's comments at home to think what's next for Max. But while we are talking about that UFC Singapore fight, were there any other highlights on there? I know Anthony Smith with a controversial split decision win. Your boy Giga got the win over Alex Caceres. Nakamura looked great at bantamweight. Of course, Aaron Blanchfield, we just talked about, looked great against Talia Santos, who just arguably, you could say, beat Valentina last time she fought. At least was very competitive with Valentina in that loss. Aaron Blanchfield made it look easy. What were some other highlights on that UFC Singapore card a couple weeks ago for you?
Yeah, like I said, the Giga Jakazi fight, like I said, he was coming back off that long layoff from injury, after his loss to Calvin Kattar. So he was looking to bounce back. And I mean, hey, Alex Caceres is no easy fight. Saying he I think he was on a 2-fight win streak. But yeah, man, it was a good fight. Giga bounced back. He got the job done, and now let's see for him. Maybe it could be Giga versus Max Holloway next. Since about Max Holloway,
it's something different.
A good striking fight. Boxing versus kickboxing. That should be a fun one. Of course, we talk about Aaron Blanchfield. She had a good win. It was a good fight for her, a step up. She had to really grind that one down because she lost the first round, but the second and third round, she bounced back, and did her thing. And then of course, the co-main event, Anthony Smith, I think he was coming off of two straight losses. He wasn't sure how his career was, but hey, man, Ryan Spann came out, did his thing. I thought it was a kind of a close fight, but hey, man, the judges gave it to Smith, and let's see what's next for him now.
It's really that third round. Like I think everybody gave Smith the first round and Spawn the second one. It was really that third round. I thought Spawn won the third round. I don't think it was a robbery, but I do think Spawn won that fight. But Anthony Smith, you gotta give him credit for bouncing back after in that last fight before that, he was sitting there talking to strangers, right? Like he thought his house was being broken into again. He was just having a mental lapse. He's kind of got some PTSD from that break-in situation in his house, and it kind of showed the last fight. This fight, he looked a lot more settled. I do want to take a second to say congratulations to the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung, with a great career. Honestly, the joy in his face when he heard the crowd chanting for him after he retired, that's something I'm sure he'll take with him back, for the rest of his life. The way that crowd treated him after he said he was retiring, just showering him with love. You're talking about a guy that, through 25 fights, put it all in the line every single time. Even took some time off from military service, came back, had another great run. Aaron Blanchfield, of course, knocking on the door. Junior Tafa, another big knockout. Also, Cortez Acosta was a big knockout. There was some really big knockouts on that card, on that Singapore card, to pay attention to, including your girl JJ Aldrich and flyweight. Talking about flyweight, she made sure people remember she's there too, with that big TKO. So Singapore was a really fun card. But Brandon, that leads us to the last thing for the day. Coming up this weekend, UFC 293. We have Ciryl Adesanya It was supposed to be Dricus Duplessis, but Dricus had a foot injury after that Whitaker fight, wasn't ready to turn around. You called it. Congrats to you. I thought it was going to happen, but Dricus wasn't ready. Of course, it didn't stop Izzy from blasting him some more. But now it's Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland's going to have a chance in that main event. We're going to go ahead and make our picks for the main event and then share some highlights for the rest of the card that we're looking forward to. But coming into this fight, Brandon, Israel's a minus 650 favorite. If you're in the odds and you're making bets on this fight shouldn't exist. This fight shouldn't be close. Does Sean Strickland have a chance?
I mean, hey man, everybody always has a chance, but to me, this is Izzy's fight to lose all the way. To me, he's going to be too slick, too smooth, too fast for Sean Strickland, and he should be able to get Strickland out of there, just like Alex Pereira was able to do.
Yeah, I don't see a pathway for Sean Strickland. You know, Sean could use his wrestling. We have seen in the last 4 or 5 fights, Sean has mixed it up. A couple fights he uses his wrestling, a couple fights he uses his stand-up game, depending on who he's fighting. You know, other than the Alex Pereira fight, which, let's be real, he was actually kind of winning that Alex Pereira fight until he got put to sleep. It wasn't a long fight, obviously, but, you know, he kept putting his chin out there, and you got somebody with one of the most dangerous left hooks in the game. You know, it happens. That's what Sean Strickland does, though. He keeps going forward. And if he uses his wrestling that we know he does have, he could give Izzy fits. You know, he could try to take him down, try to make it a boring fight. But Sean Strickland has too much cowboy in him. He keeps trying to stand up and bang with people. And if you're banging with one of the fastest, most accurate strikers in the game, I think Izzy gets him out by the second round, personally. You think this one goes the distance, or you think Izzy finishes him?
Like you said, man, I think Izzy should be able to get him out, just like Pereira was able to do.
Yeah. Real quick, a lot of other great Australians on this card. First off, you got Bam Bam Tai Tuivasa on there against Volkov. You got Justin Tafa going against Austin Lane. You got Tyson Pedro on there, who's ironically the underdog in his fight against Anton Turkalj. Carlos Oberg is on there, talking about New Zealand. You got the Malarkey McDessie fight on there. Manuel Cape is on there against Dos Santos, an undefeated fighter. A lot of exciting fights on this card. Are there any other highlights on that card that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, man, really just kind of the co-main event. You know, I like Tai Tuivasa, but I also like Volkov. Like I said, I like Volkov since his days from Bellator. So I kind of always still cheer for that guy because he was a Bellator champion. And I always still think that, you know, he could be a UFC champion as well. To me, man, the guy always has the reach, but just sometimes, man, he just gets caught, you know, and Tai Tuivasa has that power, man, where, hey, man, he catches you, his lights out. So, you know, hopefully Volkov can finally like keep him at bay with his jab, use his reach. You know, if Tai Tuivasa comes in, man, he can just catch him with a knee and put him out.
I mean, you saw against Stefan Struve, the height doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Tai Tuivasa put Struve to sleep. But Pavlovich and Spivak both gave him trouble. Ciryl Gane gave him trouble with striking. I think if Volkov uses those leg kicks of his and using the distance that he does well, I think he could give Ty some trouble for sure. One fight I'm really looking forward to, like I said, that Tyson Pedro versus Anton Turkalj fight. Pedro's actually a slight underdog going in that fight. I personally would pick Pedro just because they're in Australia, kind of in his backyard. Justin Tafa and Austin Lane is going to be a banger. And then the fight I'm looking forward to most, Jamie Malarkey versus John McDessie, is going to be a war. And then, of course, there's some upcoming Australia, New Zealand fighters on this card that you probably haven't heard of yet. Carlos Oberg continues to look fantastic since he lost that Kennedy and Chukwu fight. He's just been blazing through everybody. So a lot of fun stuff. Before we get out of here, Brandon, I do want to let the people know at home, of course, this is Art of MMA. Go ahead and head over to fightersfirst.shop. Get all the latest and greatest apparel. Of course, Brandon's gearing up for his fight against Zach Kelly for the title at Gut Check on September 30th. Go ahead and get the Bombs and Drama gear, get the mechanic gear. Go ahead and deck out and all the tune-up crew stuff you can get. Show up in Delaware and support your boy, Brandon Coutinho, on September 30th. We also have Kate Clements fighting that day in Canada. It's not a title fight like it was supposed to be originally. but it is setting her up. It is her second pro fight. Of course, she won her first pro fight, looking for a go 2-0. She is the WBC Muay Thai Canadian Bantamweight champion already. So the sky's the limit for her as well. Of course, we got Cody in November going for the Road to One championship. I heard Cedric Goodrich is scheduled to be back in October sometime with Flex. Tarzan Alberto is going to be down at Luke's Fight League 36 on October 6th as well. So a lot of stuff going on at Fighters First. Head over to the shop, support all the fighters. It's another way to sponsor the fighters, another way to get involved, get money in their pockets to help them with these fight camps, to help them with all their day-to-day expenses. It's our way of giving back. You know, you can sponsor the fighters, you can buy their merch. A lot of ways to help and support your favorite fighters. Brandon, any final words today?
No, man, just guys keep liking, subscribing, and saying leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think should be next for Max Holloway, and also to let us know who you think should be next for the women's flyweight title. Should it be Erin Blanchard or should it be Pharrell?
You know, it's gonna be really interesting in September when Grasso and Shevchenko fight on Mexican Independence Day, because if it's a close fight, we might even see a third fight between them, and everybody's left waiting. Yeah. You know, obviously Grasso was losing that first fight until she got the rear naked choke in. But she has a lot more confidence this fight, and as a fighter, confidence is everything. You know, she comes out, and how does Valentina respond from the loss? Is she shaking? Is she angry? Like, it's gonna be a lot of questions answered in September when they go at it. Of course, this weekend, UFC 293. We already made our picks. What are your picks? Let us know. Is it going to be Izzy? Is it going to be Strickland? I mean, minus 650. I think most people are probably thinking Izzy's going to win, but they're not betting on it because they're not going to make no money off that win unless you predict the finish in the round, and that's how you go about it, maybe. Or maybe you throw the Hail Mary. Maybe you pick Sean Strickland and he pulls off the upset, and you cash in that way. I'm sure Brandon will be down in Atlantic City betting some point soon. But right now he's in training camp. He's doing that. Of course, Zach Kelly, September 30th. We appreciate everybody watching. Of course, this is Art of MMA. I'm Mike In. That's the mechanic, Brandon Catino. We'll see you in a couple weeks. We're on an every other week schedule now, so we'll see you in 2 weeks. We're out.